Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Avery McCrae and here are today's top stories. Around 100 Thunder Bay residents were frozen and fed up this morning. They stood in line before 7 a.m. outside a local rapid test site at the former Edgewater Park Public School, only to learn the distribution was canceled due to the weather. Jessica Clement reports.
Residents were lined up around the parking lot starting around 6 o'clock in the morning as they were waiting for the pop-up rapid test site to open its doors at 7 a.m. But as that time came and went, the doors remained locked with no information as to why.
I was here at 6:15 this morning and I believe it's 7:30 now with the rest of these people. And you know, I've met a lot of really nice people here, and it's unfortunately we've all feel the same way as to confusion and what is going on here.
Unfortunately, what the crowd didn't know was that the rapid test handouts had been canceled, apparently due to the weather. No notices of that were posted anywhere around the facility. The annoyed residents eventually found out from others in line who checked the province's pop-up rapid test website and saw it was canceled.
It's a little silly that they don't let you know what's going on. You know, like they could have put, if it was canceled because of inclement weather, they should have put a sign on the door. There should have been some indication that there's people standing here for over an hour.
The pop-up site did open on Tuesday morning, with around 1,000 rapid tests handed out within an hour. And despite the miscommunication on day 2, people here are still encouraging others in the city to get rapid tests, as it will help people feel safer and curb the spread of the latest wave of the pandemic.
It's probably a good thing to get it. We're all in the same boat here, so I guess it's one more step to being a little safer.
We're all trying to look after one another. It's been a rough year. You know, we all just need to be patient with one another and try to be kind and just get through this.
According to the provincial website, rapid tests are scheduled to be distributed here at 7 o'clock Thursday morning. However, residents are encouraged to check that website just to make sure the same unpleasant situation doesn't happen again. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
The Thunder Bay Regional Hospital is reopening its dedicated COVID-19 unit due to the continued rise in the number of patients with the virus. And another long-term care home has declared a COVID outbreak at their facility. Jonathan Wilson has more.
The regional hospital is taking several proactive measures to deal with the rise in COVID cases, including reducing the number of essential care partners and pausing non-urgent surgeries. And the hospital will once again have a COVID unit, this after the number of hospitalizations rose to 15, including 2 in the ICU. The dedicated COVID unit will be on 3B at the hospital. Meanwhile, a COVID outbreak has been declared at the unit next door in 3A after at least 2 people acquired the infection at the hospital. The overall occupancy rate is at 91.9%, and ICU occupancy is at 77.3%. Over at Hogarth Riverview Manor, a COVID outbreak has been declared in the 5N Marigold unit. It's the 3rd outbreak this week at a local long-term care home. And the Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 58 new cases. 48 are in the city, and the other 10 are in the district and First Nation communities. Another 131 cases have been resolved, leaving the active case count at 276. And the Northwestern Health Unit is reporting 49 new cases, bringing their active case count to 438. 30 of the new cases are in the Kenora area, while 13 are in Fort Francis. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
Well, Ontario has seen a steep rise in hospitalizations. There are now 2,081 people in hospital, up from just under 1,300 from yesterday. 288 patients are in the ICU, and the province is also reporting more than 11,000 new COVID-19 cases, but that's still believed to be a massive undercount due to testing capacity limits and delays. Meanwhile, it was a busy and stressful morning for many families across the province as students across many school boards got back in front of computers and tablets to return to the online classroom. Colin DeMillo has more.
Students across Ontario switched on their computers this morning for the first day of 2 weeks of online learning. But for parents who are also essential workers, they had to scramble just to make this happen.
I had to leave the house by 6 a.m. and be here at 6:45. So I had to get a friend of mine to come over and sleep the night. That way they could wake up with my children, get my little one to daycare, and then my other one on online learning while they themselves had to now, work from my house, for their job. So.
And for her child, online learning has its drawbacks.
He personally doesn't like it. He misses his friends, and they're not motivated for the most part. Try doing gym online.
The province shut down schools for 2 weeks as the Omicron variant spreads, but health experts say the province needs to focus on getting students back.
Use that time wisely to really beef up the safety of the schools, distribute masks, do what needs to be done to create a safer indoor environment, because it's very clear that kids need to go back to school.
That's exactly what the Minister of Education insists the government is doing. In a statement, the minister says the province is deploying N95 masks for education workers, implementing stricter screening, and improving air ventilation in every single school, with more than 70,000 HEPA filter units already in schools, the government says. And 3,000 additional HEPA filter units have been purchased. Critics are casting doubt on those numbers.
Transparently report how many N95 masks or equivalents have been delivered to every school in the province. The same thing with HEPA filters. I don't have any easy to access way to know if my daughter's schools, the classrooms, whether it's one classroom, all classrooms, 50%, have HEPA filters, or what the status of the air quality is in their schools.
The Liberal leader is calling on the Ford government to prove that it has been doing its homework.
Thunder Bay's two largest school boards took an extra day to get ready to offer their online learning. Most students around the province, like we just saw, started virtual classes today, but the Lakehead and Catholic boards will get things underway tomorrow. Local schools were still busy today, making sure all students have the technical resources they need for online learning. TBT's newest reporter, Vasilios Bellos, reports.
A return to virtual learning means a return to a school day powered by screens. All Lakehead public schools were offering device pickups, including laptops or iPads for students who do not have access to one for the online learning period. Parents were able to come pick up their devices without getting out of their car, with school staff facilitating the process. Lakehead Superintendent A.J. Keene says this move ensures equity across the board.
We do have families that live in various areas that make it geographically difficult to connect to the internet. So we've secured about 170, 180 rocket sticks and cell phones to be able to provide Wi-Fi coverage for these students. We also know not everybody has a device, or some families have 3 and 4 kids. So we needed to get the devices in the hands of students.
This year saw an increase in demand for the Lakehead District School Board, with around 2,000 devices handed out compared to about 1,400 when schools had to go virtual last March. The Catholic District School Board also used the past 2 days to ensure devices got into the hands of students. Again, in a drive-through format, physical distance measures and protocols were followed, with no direct contact between parents and school staff. Director of Education Pino Tassoni says they have been planning ahead in case of a shift to virtual learning.
We were prepared prior to the break in terms of what we need to do to distribute our devices, and we also informed our staff that there is the possibility of remote learning. So thankfully we had 2 days to make that transition. Distribution happened yesterday and today. Our staff, I'm hoping they're ready. They're used to pivoting back and forth.
And much like the public board, Tassoni says the Catholic board has also seen an increase in demand for devices for students this year. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Well, as Ontario moves to a modified Step 2 of the roadmap to reopening plan, Thunder Bay gyms, restaurants, hair salons, and other businesses are once again being impacted by restrictions. Mitchell Ringos has the reaction from some local owners today.
With new measures expected to last until late January, local gyms have been completely shut down once again. The gyms were already working under low capacity numbers, with mandatory masks unless at a machine and vaccine passports being mandatory, but were still closed. Push Fitness owner Jen Bizignano is frustrated having to shut down again, as she believes for the customers they are losing the one place they're able to socialize and feel some kind of normal, and is really questioning the government's decision this time, as she says it feels like they have a chokehold on her business.
We're going to be David, they're going to be Goliath. And, in this case, we're just looking to play nicely on the playground. We're not looking to conquer. We're looking to work together because our investment is in the health and well-being of our community. And that should be the priority of all parties.
With restaurants shutting down as well, Daytona's owner John Collins has had to go back to takeout delivery, which Collins says they are making do with the cards dealt, but is still very frustrating with restrictions changing what feels like every day. Daytona's is hoping the restrictions will end after the 3 weeks, as Collins says there isn't enough long-term support from the government.
As they say, there's government support, etc. It's still a month, 2 months, 3 months away from now before you actually get anything, because you have to go through the period, then make your claims. And then by the time they pay you the money, you're 2 or 3 months down the road from now. It's not like all of a sudden this week, I can pay my bills with money from them because it's not there.
Personal care services were expected to shut down as well, but this time were only restricted to 50% capacity. So for hairdressers and barbershops, the news could be a lot worse. But for Michael's Hair Design and Spa president, Michael Muya, the news is bittersweet, as he says at any moment they could change their mind and shut them down.
We don't believe anything the government tells us anymore. Whatever the government tells us, to me, is bogus, because they can tell you one thing 1 minute, and the next minute Doug Ford's getting up on his podium and telling you something else. So I believe nothing. I only will believe what I see.
Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
A Dryden man has been hit with attempted murder charges stemming from an incident back on September 30th at a Thunder Lake residence. Dryden police had been called to investigate a serious assault. 40-year-old Jack Kelly was charged at the time with 2 counts of assaulting a peace officer, 3 counts of possession of a prohibited firearm, and uttering threats. Further investigation by the OPP has now led to 2 counts of attempted murder being added to Kelly's list of charges. His next court appearance is on January 17th. Well, working a typical full-time job can be tough enough, but things can get really complicated when your job is looking after a herd of nearly 50 wild bison. That's the challenge for the owners of Stanley Hill Bison Farm. Adam Riley has the story.
How does one end up becoming a bison farmer? Well, if you're Tim Jansen's, it's very simple.
My wife told me I needed a hobby, and so she said, you can pick anything. I said, well, let's start a farm.
Jansen's was raised on a dairy farm and got his first 2 bison when he was 17 years old, but they quickly ran away. 20 years later, he and his wife Ashley are looking after a herd of nearly 50 animals at their farm just off of Highway 1117. But unlike the dairy farm he grew up on, aside from food and fencing, the bison are relatively low maintenance. But as the sign at the paddock entrance says, do not pet the fluffy cows.
They don't need a barn. They can stay outdoors without a barn. They need a natural windbreak or a windbreak so they can hide from the elements. But other than having 4 hooves in a mouth, there's nothing similar about them compared to a dairy animal.
They're all wild, so we're not going to take the wild out of them. That's very important to keep them the way they are. They're herd animals. Cows and cattle, they're not herd animals, but bison, they need each other, and that's how they thrive.
There are some smaller farms that also raise bison here in the Northwest, but Stanley Hill is the only one in the region recognized by the Ontario Bison Association. The meat from the animals is growing in popularity and has some benefits over traditional beef.
It's a red meat, so if you do like red meat, it's a great alternative to go to, but it actually has a lot of health benefits to it. It's low in cholesterol, it's higher in iron, it's low in calories. So if you want to compare it to chicken, it's lower per ounce in calories than chicken.
This past year, however, has been tough. While the spring started off very nice, the summer drought had a serious impact on both the fields and the animals themselves.
We were feeding our animals our feed for this coming winter, like this winter's feed already in July, just to keep, there was no pasture. The pasture all died off. It looked like someone had burned all the grass off. It was completely dead. There's nothing for the animals to eat. And then also the gains were a lot less on our calves. The cows didn't produce as much milk, so obviously the calf gains were a lot smaller.
Fortunately, Stanley Hill was able to tap into some emergency funding provided by the province this year. And while they were unable to access funding for food, they were able to fence off some new areas to allow the bison to roam and feed off the land. With the partitioned land and some luck, the Jansens are confident they'll be able to stay viable moving forward. Adam Riley, TBT News.
That right there is a pretty cool story to end on. Speaking of cool things, Mitchell,